The secret to everything.
Hey everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Akashic Records, and I have a guest, and I'm going to probably save my comments and my teachings and my beliefs on the Akashic Records for another time, because I do want to talk about something else today that I was just reminded of because this person just posted a new video on YouTube. But I left something out of my book that I need to add, which is pod projected consciousness. And for fun, LOL, I'm going to call these people the pod people. And I believe the pod people and ourselves, when our consciousness is projected, which I'll get to, are kind of an extremely dangerous part of this community because they do not have any investment in being here. They didn't want to come and help you enough, LOL, if that's their excuse, to risk their soul being captured, which is a whole nother teaching, or the fire creation part of their being siphoned or used or jumped as or accessed or harassed or targeted or gang stalked, as so many of you guys are. So they cheated, and they're in a comfy little pod surrounded by their loved ones on their ship of origin, and their consciousness is being projected for a reason, and generally not a positive reason, into this game. Now, even though you all think, you say the word Palladian and you think they're all positive, very few Palladians, even though many of us are them or are parts of soul collectives, that's part of our history or heritage. Just like normal people, there's positive and negative and mixed, and none of us are all positive, none of us are all negative. And who's the judgment, who's the criteria in a polarized world? We think we know, but we still don't, because there's different, charts or evaluation tools that we're using when we judge people. But it's so funny how I get interrupted when I try to record something. So I want to talk to you about the pod people, because they are dangerous, first of all, because they aren't invested. If you take out their body, they aren't in danger of going to the in-between lives. They aren't in danger of being captured. They aren't in danger of being deceived, because they can be woken up in their pods at any time. So they're literally, their body's hardwired into the pod where their soul remains, and just their consciousness, just their thinking, just their emotions are projected into this body. Some people do project their soul, but very few. So this is a version of an NPC intergalactically. And the funny thing is, most of them are also memory wiped when they come in. Not all of them. So they don't know. So this is a dangerous trend where we're seeing these pod projected people that came and paid to play this game, but they don't really give a crap about you because they're just here to play. In other words, some of us play as if the game has higher stakes, which it actually does, than others. Some are, here for different reasons, very frivolous reasons. They're not here to contribute to the raising of the collective. Now, a lot of these people claim to be deprogrammers, but they're actually your handlers. They're actually sitting in polarized judgment of many other people without proof, trying to discredit those of us that are trying to contribute to the consciousness and raise the consciousness. And it becomes extremely, extremely dangerous. Now, thankfully, we can easily discern if there's a fire creation spirit in, or as some of these beings say, fire spark, copying from me, because they were a student of mine. But it's easy to see if there's actually fire creation in someone, if they're an eternal being, and how many eternal beings. And so many of these beings are very, very MK Ultra controlled, even while they're saying they're teaching against MK Ultra control. They're very sanctimonious. They act like, now I'll call people out all day long, but anybody that knows me, anybody that sits in my classes and really knows me knows that I'll call myself out first of all. I'll recant things that I've taught. I'll recant things that I believe. I'll recant opinions, because a fire creation being that is expanding and raising their frequency changes their mind all the time about a lot of things. They're not stuck in the same script, or they're not stuck in the same version of reality. So that's one of the most dangerous things about these beings. The second dangerous things about these beings, if they don't come in with any soul fragment, and just a consciousness or an AI programmed in projection from their pod for the race's agenda, then they're an empty avatar, which can then be jumped with many, many other avatars, and a lot of them end up in consciousness, because the only chance that this game has of going to a higher dimension or a higher frequency and bringing everyone along with it by the law of resonance is having a higher consciousness. So there's going to be less corruption, let's say, in Satanism, because that's already sunk, right? Than there is in consciousness. You're going to see the most agents. And I have looked and looked and looked at the energetics. And honestly, you guys, at this current moment, there's a little wobble, like 96, 97% of everyone speaking in consciousness is heavily corrupted in some way. Now, we're all hijacked. We're all, overtaken by AI at times. We're all jumped. We're all siphoned. We're all merged with. But what is the knowledge level and the self-awareness of these people speaking that they are even hijacked? What is the knowledge that they're even the soul frequency that they claim to channel? And it's just super, super distorted. So this person is a very, very small player, very little effect, thankfully, on consciousness and reality. This person lives in money fear, which is another sign of someone that doesn't understand the game nor how to win it. But the point is, be careful of these pod people. And hopefully you guys can learn to discern these different types of beings and, who is here attempting to win this game for the benefit of all, and who is here deceiving and, holding up progress. So I just want to kind of introduce the topic of pod people and what it means is pod projection consciousness with or without souls, because I just came across this person, again, blathering, saying nothing as usual. But just wanted to bring it to your awareness, because I guarantee you are listening or sitting under or familiar or know in your daily lives people that are in pods on ships outside of this reality with their consciousness being projected into this reality. And I am going to refer to them here on out as pod people. And then 8 other people will start coming on talk shows after me and start talking about this. Watch it happen, because that's what they love to do. But anyway, we're going to go into my interview with Jennifer. And just really briefly, although I respect opinions, my abilities and my knowledge does not always align with other people's knowledge and abilities. And I always hope to be able to have an open discussion, but I'm also very good at reading frequency, and I'm not always able to have that. So I will be discussing either privately in a class, as I already have, or on a different podcast, my views about Akashic Records readers. It's such a buzzword. I do use buzzwords, unfortunately, as well. I try not to, because I think it can be highly kind of mind wiping or brain washing when we use these buzzwords. We think we know what they mean, but a whole bunch of energy rides in on these words, because of course words are spells. And I just think we need to get away from a lot of these buzzwords and just teach how to connect directly to all information and just call it all information. But again, I'm not going to dig deep into what I believe about the Akashic Records and what I disagree with in this interview at this time. But I just want to let it be known that I am not in complete agreement. Of course, I never would be, nor would she be with me, of everything the speaker says, although I do respect her as having real abilities. We kind of have a disagreement in ideology, let's say. So with all that said, I will let you guys make up your own minds, like I always encourage my people to do, and present you with this interview today. Feel free to drop comments, ask me questions, write me privately at support@KimberlyMcGeorge.com. And we're pretty tight on one-on-ones for the next couple months, but we're still offering one-on-ones. I do pull my one-on-ones. So there are times where I will just cut all one-on-ones, and I will also cut mentoring. Right now we have both mentoring and one-on-ones available. Also, there is limited space available in the North Carolina live event. Our New Mexico live event is virtually, I haven't checked lately, sold out. It's also the earlier one starting in September. So we do have payment plans. So if you're interested in experiencing what it's like to be part of this riveting, high level, no holds barred, people that are willing to work, community, people that want to know truth, people that don't want to be lied to, don't want smoke blown up there, you know what, then, be part of my community, join my monthly group, play around with the technology, understand these deeper things that can be known and can be seen. We are in the age of disclosure. This is, we've been in it for a while. And so pretty soon you're going to see a schism in the community. And right now I'm in the small part of the schism. But hopefully eventually I will be in the large part of the schism where we only have authentic people, where these inauthentic egos are not tolerated, and these people that are fraudulent and backing each other, will be booted out for those of us that do desire truth. Notice I don't say love and light and all that BS, but do desire truth, do desire to walk in authenticity and integrity. That's what we're looking for these days, and that's what I believe will continue to come out and out more and more, and you'll be surprised at how little is out there. So again, I know I said I'd be quiet, but enjoy today's presentation. Please like and subscribe. I don't have tons of time to produce a podcast, but I decided, because of where we are in the timelines, to go ahead and contribute my energy to this platform, and contributing my energy to, more free education and get the messages that I think are so important to be out at this time out there. So secret2everything.com, get a secret space scan, get a soulmate scan, get a tab scan, get a full scan. Let me know what your concerns are and how I can help you. Schedule one-on-ones, schedule mentoring, come to our live event, join my monthly group, get involved with people that are not playing a game within a game, but that are winning this every single day. Hey, you guys, it's Kimberly McGeorge, NDCNH, and you guys really like it when I talk to other people about other things other than my top specialty. So today I have a really cool lady. My dogs think so too. A really cool lady that I'd like you to meet, and I'm going to have her introduce herself. And then we will get started on our topic, and you might be able to figure out our topic when she introduces herself. So, my lovely friend Jennifer, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you?
Oh, thank you so much for the warm welcome, and thanks for having me. I know this is going to be so fun today and informative too. So I am Jennifer Spor, and I'm a spiritual advisor, channel, and an Akashic Records master consultant and teacher. And so I work with a lot of people, support a lot of people who are feeling guided to the Akashic Records and to get that work, that legacy work out into the world. And so, yeah, that's me.
So some of you know I've done a couple videos, light little videos about the Akashic Records, and I have a lot to say about it, but I don't really necessarily consider myself playing in that specific library. So let's talk about your definition, how you see, which could be different from how other people see it, of the Akashic Records. What do you mean? Some people may not even be familiar with that term at all.
Yeah. So very simply put, the Akashic Records are the library for your soul. So each one of us has our own Akashic Records, and actually all beings have individual Akashic Records. Mother Earth, the planet, trees, animals, everybody has them. And they all reside within, the Akasha, which I define as the limitless field of consciousness. Everything is energy. And so very simply, that's what they are. For those of you who are familiar with the Bible, it is referred to in the Bible as the book of life. So that's another term that comes up every so often. but they are very simply the limitless storehouse of all of your soul's information and experiences. And I'm feeling guided to mention, because our human selves, right, we're a soul here having an experience in this human body. And a lot of times we refer to our soul as kind of the end all be all, or the source of our creation. But what I want to say is, when we talk about soul purpose and we talk about soulmates and soul led and all of the other soul references, what we're really referring to is an aspect of our soul, because we have an oversoul and we have a soul. So one of our purposes for being here, right, to continue to evolve, is to learn, is to ascend, and also to be of service and sharing our wisdom and gifts. And what happens is, every incarnation we experience, those experiences are collected, reside in our Akashic records, and are combined with our oversoul.
So when you say you read Akashic Records, or someone's, I shouldn't just say the Akashic Records, but when you're reading a specific being's Akashic Records, what are you reading? Are you reading this incarnation, this point of view, this aspect in this avatar? Are you reading the
So in this now,
oversoul? Are you reading?
I'm sorry, there was a little delay. I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is that yes, in this now reality, when I'm connecting with a client for a session, I am going into their records from the aspect of this reality, this dimension that they're in now, in their conscious awareness. And so I say that, right? What happens though, a lot of times, sometimes, is whatever reason has brought the client across my path, and for whatever reason they want to be in their Akashic records, sometimes other information comes forward that is connected to that reason, right? So past lives are a common thing that can come up. Sometimes future lives come up too. And I say past and future to put it into context, in that we operate within this time construct on the earth plane, right? But beyond the earth plane, time doesn't exist. It's really, everything is happening simultaneously, in the now. That could be, I mean, we could go down lots of rabbit holes in this conversation.
That's really interesting. I was going to talk a little bit about this, because a lot of people don't understand that you can play even in this reality with the concepts of time and space. So if you hold time constant and vary space, you can create a probable reality. But if you hold space constant and vary time, you create a parallel existence. And that is, I don't want to dive deep into that because it's kind of way off where I want to go, but I just want to drop that in you guys' field, in that daydreaming, for example, does create a solid reality. You can literally live multiple lives within what we would consider even this present life that isn't even what we would call a past life or a future life. We can create. So when people say, the game's not fun, what I call the game, or Earth isn't fun, or Earth is heavy, sometimes I think we need to step back and take a lighter attitude. I mean, when we watch a movie or when we read a book, that's a parallel reality, or that's a alternate realm that someone else has created that they're inviting you in, or you're inviting yourself into by joining with that collective agreement of the characters in the scene in that book of reality. And that becomes, a solid reality too. And again, I just want to kind of drop that in your guys' field. So deep topics, whenever we start using words like reality or timelines or soul, we could go a million different directions, but kind of want to, so when a lot of people refer teachers, speakers, Akashic record readers referred to the Akashic records as a library. Do you agree with that terminology? Why or why not?
I'm neutral. That's the answer. I mean, really,
Okay. Okay.
library, I can relate to why that term is used so much and why I use it sometimes, because
Okay.
it is a very easy way for someone, especially someone who's not familiar with the Akashic records, to start to put into context like what it is. So,
Okay.
for example, uh, some people actually do see a library or some form of books, right, that they've shared when their Akashic records are open. Uh, for me personally, when I'm opening my own Akashic records, it's usually I'm stepping through like a wormhole or like through, I see a limitless field of consciousness and the cosmos essentially, which I think is really well represents what your Akashic records are, because they're limitless. I mean, in all of the soul's experiences. But anyways, to answer your question, library, I think, puts simply into context for people who aren't as familiar with the records.
Let's go back to why you personally chose, because I specialize kind of in working with technology, and I know you do a lot of things and I do a lot of things, but you use the terms on your website and your material, and you teach the Akashic records, and that's one of your, I would call, specialties or something. For now, you've chosen to lead with or focus on. What prompted you, out of all the things and all your gifts and abilities, to focus or offer that particular bent versus focusing on something else?
Yeah, so part of that answer, the reason why I put so much emphasis on the Akashic records is because every person has them, no matter where they are on their path.
Mm.
And imagine what our world would be like if everyone felt confident in accessing themselves at that level to retrieve information and literally shapeshift, like be even more conscious and intentional around creating their
Mhm.
realities.
Mhm.
That's one of the reasons why I put so much emphasis on the records, because that's why I teach them,
Mm.
because I believe in more and more people having access to themselves at that level and empowering them to confidently
Mhm.
do it themselves, because we have all of the answers within us, right? um I use the term healing, but it's not really, it's like healing is really remembering, but we're able
Mm.
to, within our records, shift any energetic distortions, right, that are causing us to hold on to this veil of forgetfulness. So the healing available, the information available is tremendous. It's limitless, truly. And that's why I put so much emphasis on the records.
How how does, because it's interesting, because you call it reading your own Akashic records. I call it, and it may be the same thing or not, but I can read people are like, can you read your own timelines? I'm like, of course. Do I always do it? No, because to me, it's not always fun to know what's happening. Sometimes I want to ride the ride, and sometimes I want to know, change, make different decisions, whatever. But how has being able to read your own Akashic records changed your life or affected your life in a positive or negative way? Like, do you do it every day? Do you check in every month? Do you do it, once and that's all? Like, how do you use the Akashic records privately in
Yeah,
your own life?
I love this question so much. Uh when I was newer to working with the records, I access them pretty much every day.
Oh, wow.
I think, especially when you're newer to accessing the records, it's important to do it every day for, I usually advise students about 30 days. It's just to establish confidence and that foundation in going in and doing it, right? Because as with anything else,
I agree.
it's
Yeah.
important to be in a neutral space when you go into your records and to be confident in what you're going in there for. If you're trying to do that when you're feeling stressed or feeling any kind of lower frequency, it will distort what you receive or don't receive, because even though you're in the Akashic records, you still have free will, right? That doesn't
Right.
go away.
Right.
So if you're newer, every day. For me, at first, when it was newer, it was every day. Over time, it got to be less frequent, but really more just tailored to whenever I was truly feeling guided to go in there. So it's
Yeah.
more about going in there when you feel guided to do so.
Have you ever had a student that came to you and wanted to learn how to access the Akashic records that was unable to, which wouldn't necessarily be a reflection on you at all? But are there people, I guess I'm saying, that cannot learn or might not be open, or there's something, I don't know what the reasons would be, you would know, because I don't teach that, but do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I do.
can anyone do it easily? I mean, it's so funny because I always say, with what I do, I'm like, yeah, a kindergartner can operate the tech. Now, going beyond that, operation is different from mastery too,
Yes,
so I'm sure there's
absolutely.
levels as well, but what challenges have you run into, if any, with teaching other people, how to
Mhm.
access that?
Yeah, so I teach the records in a group setting, in a virtual retreat kind of
Sure.
setting.
Sure.
So that is really common with people who are new to accessing the records. I would say, so when someone feels like they can't, I've never had anyone say they can't access them. It's
Wow.
really more about once they get in there, what's happening when they get in
Oh.
there.
Mhm.
And what it really, the biggest challenge I think most people who are new to accessing their records face is their ability to separate the ego, their human mind, from
Mhm.
their soul level self, their intuitive self. And that's one of the components that I teach about. And it's very important to be able to do that. Because if you're in there with resistance, right, the
Mhm.
information and the shifts in energy that you experience are only going to be to the extent of your willingness to receive.
So, what is one of the most, if you don't mind sharing, shocking or interesting things you found in your own Akashic records to you?
Gosh, honestly, I haven't found anything that I've been shocked by.
That's
Um,
good, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on this path for quite a few years, and then I've had a lot of variation of experiences in this current human reality.
Sure.
So it takes a lot to truly
Yeah,
shock
surprise you
me.
at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's more of like, what I love is that there's always something new. Like, I'm always learning something new about another aspect of my being, or
Mhm.
where I'm currently at now. And the longer that I'm having this experience, the more experiences I have, the more, right? I
Mm.
believe, one of the greatest qualities about a leader and a spiritual teacher and a healer, right, is humility. Is
Mm.
that there's always a willingness to learn. There's always that we don't know. Like we know as much as we believe we know in this reality, right? But there's always more because it's limitless. There's always more. So I would say like it's not shock, but more like awe.
Mm. Have you looked a lot? I've looked at a fair bit at my future, close future, but I mean out of this reality future, which is really interesting. Have you looked at yours? Like talking like, what we would call like a million years from now, or you know what I mean, in our time, 500,000 years from now. Have you looked at like future for you?
Interesting, something that's coming forward as you're saying that just now, it's not 500,000 years in the future, but I did have this experience where it was like 10,000 years in the
Oh,
future.
wow. Oh,
And
yeah.
I wasn't a human in this.
Embodied.
I
You
was
were
a
you
guide.
embodied? You weren't embodied? Were you embodied at all in
I
anything?
was I
Did you
was
have a
a, I was like a light being, like a guide.
Oh, you weren't embodied. Okay, you were just
Yeah.
light, you're saying.
Yes.
Wow.
But I had a specific experience where I was shown a vision, right? Where I was actually guiding someone who was in a
Oh,
human
wow.
body.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, it's so funny because when I look at you, it's so funny because you've also been that many times in the past, which is interesting before you came here. So it's so funny that that's what people don't understand. Like, I love what you said about knowing, because what I have found in working with myself and people, the older I get, is we know what we like. We know who we are. We know we have this knowing. Not that you can't choose something different at any time, but we tend, when you're a first, second, third, fourth wave, and you've done it all, and you've seen it all, and you've been it all, there's a little bit to me when we get to this point in time, non-space, as I call it, where there's a strong essence of who we are. Like, you're a teacher right now, you're a guide, you're a healer, you're, a psychic. And it's funny because you've been that many times before, and you're still going to choose that to be many times again. So when we wander around being like, what's my purpose? Who am I? Well, wait, what do you like? What do you like to do? Do you like to
Yeah.
garden? Do you like to walk in nature? Do you like to race motorcycles, around a racetrack going 700 miles an hour? Like, what do you like? Like, there's clues there to like your all-time, all space, multifaceted self. What do you like? Let's start. I always call it, let's go for the low-hanging, fruit, people.
Yeah.
Let's not make this difficult. I don't know. I know you coach and teach about that too. But I think that knowing is, it's so funny because when I was in third grade, I was writing plays that my whole class was putting on. My acting teacher was the director of Roseanne and Home Improvement, and I wrote plays for him. And he's like, oh my God, in college when I was 20, and he's like, this could go to Hollywood right now. Now, wait, am I like some savant genius writer? No. But have I written way before? Why write way for? Yes. So these gifts are really big clues, I think, to who we are. Even
Absolutely.
the side gifts, that's a side gift of mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you referenced that being a side gift, because we do have many gifts, right? Just like I have lots of other gifts aside from working in the Akashic Records. And the
Mm.
Akashic Records are one of the most direct ways to do that.
So if I came to you and I was obviously not on my highest timeline. If I, if I'm like struggling in everything, my career and my money flow and my relationships and my health and my happiness. And, we both identified that, let's say, something needs to change. How do you present then that new information? Is it more an unsaid process? Is it more who you are that shifts that? Because I also have that ability to shift timelines. Or is it the information that you're sharing and how you're sharing it? Are you understand? Like, so
Yep, this is a
what would be that process, a little bit?
yeah, this is a great question. And the answer is all of those things. How that unfolds for a particular person is directly related to the level of resistance they're holding on to.
Interesting. Wow.
So for example, I've had clients that were still in very much a place of fear with certain things that they were challenged with in their life, right? So in our time together, because I still work with a limited number of private clients, usually 3 months or longer, right? People who want to
Sure.
receive ongoing
Right.
support. So with those people, I'm hard pressed to move past the information phase, working in their
Oh,
records, right? Because they have a lot more resistance to moving forward, a lot more fear about moving forward, and they're choosing to hold on to that, right? If I am working with a client who is in a space on their path where they're surrendered, they're taking more of a proactive approach to their ascension and their evolution, and they want to align to their highest timeline or change timelines or whatever it is that they want to do. Sometimes we're able to do that in as little as a couple sessions. It's because I'm able to go straight to like, okay, we can work more with the technology because you're open to receive that. It's very magical when you can, it's a game changer when you reach a place on your path. And I'm not saying that you just never feel fear again, because it's just the emotional spectrum is part of the human experience. The difference is that when it comes up, you're consciously aware of it, and you make a free will choice that serves your highest good to release it and move past it.
It's interesting. One of the things when I do scans that is still in almost everyone's field, including mine, which I felt like I had a little bit breakthrough moment this week on, is the technology that they use though to run this place and keep us here is very fear-based. So we're constantly being bombarded. And I'm not just talking about like watching something gross on the news. I mean, it's way beyond that. It's actually fear frequencies of all different kinds, fear, horror, being beamed, into our fields and all around us and into our environment. So I think once you get to a certain frequency, it's a little easier to not hold on to that. But one of the, I think actually, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this. What I found in working with people is, believe it or not, the trauma, even if they've dragged in a lot from past lives, future lives, wherever they're dragging it from, current life. It's so funny how hung up, it just cracks me up. We could get off into this too. It's a pet peeve of mine for people to get hung up on their childhood and the inner child. I'm like, we got to get past this, guys. We got to get, it's so much bigger than this. Most people are coming in, however they hit the womb, whatever their soul hits, whether it's after the baby's born or in the womb or wherever the soul gets in the body. Most people are coming in with a tremendous amount of trauma, and their childhood trauma from this incarnation, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, is the least of your worries. Why don't we start releasing? And then we have trauma every day, from being here, or some of us have more than others. You know what I mean? You fight with your husband is a form of trauma. You get injured, a form of trauma. We have little traumas that pile up. So my goal, and I kind of want to know all your thoughts about all of this, like, is to help people. I want to start releasing more trauma than we're accumulating, if that makes sense. So that when my clients and I leave this incarnation, we have less trauma or no trauma. Do you know what I mean? Than when I came
Yes.
in, because I think that's going to make our next experience, whatever that is, whether it's back here or somewhere else, so much better. And the
Yeah.
trauma is not that hard to release. The fear is harder to release. Now, there is that resistance piece. I'm going to totally agree with you there. And after I get your opinion, I'll share some things that I found, and I want to get your opinion on that too. But go ahead. What's your thoughts about all that mishmash I just said?
Yeah, there's a lot there, yes, trauma is easy to release when you're willing to release it, right? That being said, where I think a lot of people, because yes, there's the inner child is a component that comes up with a
Sure.
lot of people, right? There are different stages on your ascension journey, right? There's the stage where you're aware of these things, the inner child and all of these aspects, right? And you're moving through those. Then there's the stage of where you're able to move beyond the self.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? So what I believe makes that challenging for a lot of people is because you talked about all of the fear that we live in here. And yes, that's all by design to siphon our life force energy. Okay. There's a lot of distraction energy that can keep us in fear, and it's everywhere. It's on the media, your favorite cartoon television show. I mean, it's very important to treat your life force as sacred and to do your best to only allow into your field that which nurtures you. Nurtures you in the truest sense, not nurturing from an addictive, codependent perspective, right? It's important to differentiate that, because someone could go, oh, well, sometimes just checking out on Netflix or whatever, I'm just saying Netflix, but whatever you're doing, right? And feel like you're checking out or whatever. But it's like, okay, is that really helping you to align to more of who you really are, or is it actually taking you further away from that? And why are you wanting to check out? My whole point being, because we could go down a rabbit hole on this too, there is a lot of distraction energy, and especially the time that we're in right now, in this now time, many are being called to align to that path, to start taking action in the direction that they're being guided to move in service to raising consciousness of the planet. Okay. And so there is even more distraction energy every day, being put out there. It's like something I find myself saying to people often, just reminding them about, yes, there's a lot of turmoil happening in the world, and there's a lot to care about, especially when you're very sensitive, but the best way that anyone can make a difference, a positive difference, and to bring higher frequencies of light is by aligning to the true essence of who they are. And when they do that, they create a ripple effect.
Speaking of distraction, it's so funny. All my dogs outside just started barking. Come here, baby. It's okay. It's so funny. When you were talking about distraction, I just keep hearing dopamine addiction, dopamine addiction. There's so much, whether it's food or sex or Netflix or whatever. It could be going to see concerts. A lot of things cause, that dopamine hit. Social media, I mean, they're talking about, I forget which state was talking about banning social media, which I don't know how they do that, but whatever. But, social media with children under 6, because it's such a issue. And, I walked in a restaurant the other day and there was a 1-year-old baby in a high chair with a phone propped up with kids' cartoons. And I'm not saying, I'm not doing a judgment thing where this is right or wrong. I'm just saying, what are we teaching? Are we teaching our children at a very young age
That's the culture.
to not be present? And, I think if you're always distracted with whatever it is, it doesn't have to be screen time. It can be soccer. It can be something we would consider healthy. It could be exercise. But again, I think that's such a sham here, because everything when I run people says more time alone, more time alone, more time in nature, more silence, more direct connection, more sitting with yourself, which we also see modeled for us in the amazing Eastern cultures where the men have learned, and women, but mostly men, unfortunately, have learned how to levitate, have learned how to walk through walls, have learned how to remember who they are, which is really all it is. It's not that we're not that, it's the remembering and the actualizing into the body. And I just think all the distraction, when do we have time to, even if there were a book on how to ascend, none of us have time to read it, even if there were 100% true.
That I would say it's not a matter of not having time. It's about the reality that you choose to create. So earlier you mentioned this timelines. We've talked, referenced very briefly timelines.
Right.
You can tap into all of the different paths and timelines and choose to directly align with the one that serves you the most. I wanted to say from earlier when you were talking, it's not that I'm not saying it's not okay to watch a movie. There's two parts to this. It's more about what's the deeper motivation behind doing so. And when you start questioning, when you're honest with yourself and you start taking more responsibility for your experience here, you'll find yourself naturally disinterested in a lot of those things that you used to do, so it's interesting.
I agree. I also think there's such a vulnerability with the Black Mirror technology, which we're on now, but to compromise. Very often I will watch something darker because it has some of the more mystical themes that I like, whether it's about witches or vampires, or of course it's going to interest me, or a paranormal show. But often if I am not going into that very consciously, kind of as you said, like prepared conscience, okay, guards up, I'm going to be very aware. I'll turn that off and I'll be like, why do I feel so crappy? And I'm like, oh gosh, look what's in my room, look like what's in my field. I mean, people don't think that teachers or healers or high frequency people or people who are psychic or people who remember. I get jumped, I get compromised, my field and a lot of times it's not somebody doing it to me. It's not even me going to the grocery store and, some being is like, hey, you look juicier than her, I'm going to jump to you. It's me in my own home doing it to myself, through what I'm exposing myself to. So I've tried to get better, like you said, and be very conscious. And so I'll give you an example. My daughter, I was just talking about this. One of my daughters, I have 4 daughters, recommended an author in a book, and everybody on Book Talk on TikTok was like, this is amazing. I read 3 pages of the book. And if you guys read those 3 pages, most of you would be like, you're on crack. Like, why did you stop reading it? But I felt the darkness in those 3 pages. And I'm telling you, there was nothing dark in those 3 pages, but I felt it. And I'm like, this is a no for me. And my oldest daughter read through the whole thing and she said, Mom, she goes, you know that book you told me to download, which is so funny because I told her to download, but I didn't read it. But she's like me. She can use her own, you know what I mean? She's 30
Yeah.
years old. It's not like she's 6. She's like, Mom, you would have been so triggered by that book. She goes, that was the most disgusting, horrible, horrifying, shocking, dark book I've ever read. And I am like, oh, that was too bad I told my daughter to read it, but she could have stopped. And the reason she didn't stop is because I also want to point this out. There's an icky, sticky, seductive feeling in some of this stuff that even though we know and our oversoul, our inner guidance is saying, stop, you're going to pay for this. We're like, ooh, it feels so bad. It feels good. So watch that feeling too. Because my daughter's like, it was so horrible. I had to keep going. And that's an interesting decision too. I'm not judging her. So I'm trying to be better, with social media. I'm like, every time I go on social media, I just want to adopt dogs. And I already have a ton of dogs. And I'm like, why am I wasting my day looking at sad, hurt, lonely dogs? Like, how's that beneficial to me?
Well, the energy is on some of those platforms. I mean, and some of that's out in the public. Like, there was this one show on Netflix. I can't remember the name of it, but the whole thing was kind of like a documentary on the manipulation of social media platforms and how they purposely engineer the algorithms to hook you in. And there was so much hype around it. I watched it, and the whole time I was just like, yep, totally. I mean, yeah, nothing is random. It's really all of that destruction energy, and those things are all engineered to
Absolutely.
take. They're engineered to take our energy.
I just started noting, like, it's just easy to scroll through Instagram, and you guys have done it, or any social media platform, and you just go from post to post to post to post to post, and eventually something hooks you in, and then you keep going because you had a good hit of dopamine, and I've just tried to pay attention to, I feel so much better and get so much more done for me, staying off any of that. And then having a haunting picture stuck in my mind or a haunting video of anything, it's not always the same thing. I don't know. I just do better off of it. Again, that Black Mirror technology, I think, is way more complicated and has way more spiritual presence behind it than even just AI engineering. It's pretty powerful stuff, really. Pretty potent.
Yeah, it is. And I also feel guided to say, there's a lot about social media that can obviously be used for good,
Sure.
You're on there, I'm on there.
That's true. Good point.
I will say, in my quest to, cross my T's and dot my I's, I made a huge change a couple months ago where I left my account but walked away from 2 platforms that had been a core part of my business for years.
Really?
Yes, and it was because of the energies,
Oh, wow.
and it was because, like, integrity has always been a value of mine, but for me on my personal journey, it is really just like putting the screws, so to speak, to what feels real. What feels real? Like, where do I feel light showing up?
Sure.
To connect.
Yeah, I like that. Interesting. Yeah, one thing I wanted to go back to your timeline comment. I don't think this is commonly taught or we think about it, but I call it, there's like a collective timeline in any reality, multiple collective timelines, but there's also, people are like, oh, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. I'm like, I look at my timeline and I'm like, it's not on my timeline. And I love, and this can be consciously done, which is what you are referring to, I believe. If you need a 20-hour day and you only have 6 hours, I get
sometimes I get 40-hour days and I'm like, why did I make this day so long? We need to wrap this up. But literally I can get 8 days of work done sometimes in one day if I need to. I just stretch time.
Yes.
Or
Stretching
street
time
time.
and also asking for support, asking
That too.
guides for
That too.
support too.
That
Setting
too.
an intention. I'll often do that. I'll look at something that, you know, things that I want to do in a day a lot of times, and first thing in the morning, I'll just go, okay, you know what? Whatever's going on, this day needs to be done with this by this time. And
Mm-hmm.
like 98% of the time it happens.
That's nice too. That's a good reminder. One of the things I think people struggle with, or my clients anyway, maybe not your clients, but I do think it's helpful to know who to connect to. I think that's a whole nother, which we don't have much time for tonight, but we can maybe meet and talk about it another time. I think that deception and sometimes who we're connecting with or who we're talking to needs to be discussed, because my clients struggle. They're like, who do I ask for help? I do like that I know who my soul collective is and and I think you do too. I do like that. I do like that I know who to go to. Does that make sense? And I trust them and they look out for me. And I know that they're sometimes the ones that are taking me to the biodomes and they're positively modifying my genetics. I love that. I love that I know who to go to. So what would you suggest to people? Because this is what I know from working so long in the paranormal, and I know you have too. When you put out a clarion call, help me. Oh, baby, there's lots of people and beings and consciousnesses that will come in to help you, air quote, help you. So what do you recommend to your clients? I recommend my clients that they know who they are, and that helps. The more you know about who you are and remember who you are, of course, then the frequency is what I would say of trusted help. But what do you recommend to your clients if they don't know? Of course, you can help people do that. I can help people do that. But let's say we haven't helped them. Nobody's ever helped them. And they're just like feel alone in the world and they don't remember who they are and they don't know who to ask to help. Who would you suggest they call on for help without doing a generic, you know what I'm saying? Help me.
I believe that answer is two-part. The first is when you're asking the universe or God or whatever that is for you, right? Your belief system. When you're asking for help, don't do it from a place of desperation and fear.
Which a lot of people do.
Step into your spiritual leadership energy. Make sure you're in a neutral place when you're asking for that help. Because it's also part of it is about the frequency that you're emitting.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. And then the other part is actually similar to what you said about people knowing who they are. The number one most effective way, I believe, to discern any situation is to be anchored into what truth feels like for you in your body.
I like that.
Not what you think is truth.
I like that. Yeah. I like
right?
that.
What you know in your body to be truth. Because that's the other part of it, right? Is that even with manifesting all these other things, a lot of people are actually doing that from disconnected, like in their mental space only, and not in throughout all of their bodies, right? When they're doing something.
I refer to that as, and it's a struggle, and I'm not saying I have it all the time either in everything, you guys, because I don't. But I refer to it as the difference between like wearing a coat and being the coat. Like,
well, understanding that you are the coat. You are the coat.
Yeah, exactly.
This gets into dissolving separation consciousness too.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, for sure. But I love that you say that you pointed that out. I think that's when people are like, oh, the secret doesn't work. Well, first of all, and again, we don't have time to get onto this. Some of the things taught in the secret are not how the multiverse or the game actually work. But that's another story. They're kind of like reverse principles. But you can't do anything just from a mental state, really. That's not how it works. I mean, so I teach everything you believe is real, but believe is not fake. believe is an embodiment of the frequency. So people misunderstand that, and they're like, well, I think I want to be rich. I know I want to be rich. I'm like, but are you embodying the beliefs or non-beliefs, you know, because there's a lot of beliefs that stop us from being wealthy. Like, you have to embody anything that you want to create. You cannot attract anything less or more than who you're being at any time.
Well, and what's your deeper motivation behind wanting to be rich? Because at the end of the day, truth and love is what's real, right? You know, and to say that someone's truth may not be the same as another person's truth, but the deeper motivation can heavily influence, you know, how much you're going to feel like you're struggling or how easy it feels.
I like that you brought that up too, because there are races that I teach about that actually will support that goal, but they will not. I'm talking about ET races, you guys, that have access to anything. They're basically like a genie in a pot, but they will not support. If you're like, I want to win the lottery because I want to buy a castle in Bavaria and, you know what I mean, live out and own 3 islands, they're going to be like, pass. But if you're like, I want to create this wonderful thing to heal humanity, you know, they'll not only help you do that, they'll give you the plans, they'll inspire you, they'll provide the backers and the donors. So it does, assistance is out there for, I would call it a little bit of a purity of heart or purity of motivation to raise not just your own frequency or your own world, which is great, but for those beings that are willing to really step out and help the collective and elevate, you know, the whole consciousness, really.
Yes. And people, there can be people that are pure of heart and that are also, and it can still feel hard for them because they're still holding on to a lot of stories in their body.
That's a good point too. The stories. Oh my
There
gosh.
are lots of directions we can go on this.
Yeah, there are. But I don't want to keep our lovely friend. So we'll have her back and we'll see what you guys, I'm sure you guys will have questions and stuff, and I'll get response on this too. But why don't you tell people where they can get a hold of you, and I'll put it also down below if they want a reading or a class or you know, to mentor with you.
Yeah. I think the easiest place to go is just my website, which is jenniferspor.com. So if someone's just listening to this audibly, it's JENNIFERSPOR.com.
Your name.
Yep.
Right.
My name.
Like, okay. Her
Believe
name.
it or not, sometimes people get confused with how to spell my last name. So I'm always like,
well, that's good that you spelled it. And we'll put, like I said, we'll put a link that you guys can click down below. But I know you guys love when we have chit chats with other people. So here you go. Here's another people that I had a chit chat with. So thank you for being with us today. And we can do this again sometime.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful. Could talk about this stuff for days.
That's true. We could riff for days. Okay. Well, okay. We'll be back. Thanks, guys. Like and subscribe.